It's great to have you all here tonight. Oisin will talk about the Irish context, but we're here to launch a book produced by the PAH in Spain called Mortgage Lives, and we believe that this has an important contribution to make to what we're trying to do in addressing the same kind of problems in Ireland. So just to introduce, first of all, I'd like to thank Mandate and Own English for the use of the hall, and I'd like to thank and welcome Javo and Jenny. If you give them a round of applause.
Okay. Hello. Okay. All right. So I'm Oisin Fagan. I'm from Housing Action Now. We're made up of social housing activists, people interested in the problems within private rented accommodation, and also there's a massive problem with mortgage arrears. We're part of the European Action Coalition for the Right to Housing in the City, and it's through that framework that we were able to invite over the PAH, represented here tonight by Jenny and Javo. So I'm going to talk a very small amount about the Irish context of the housing crisis, because it's very similar to the Spanish housing crisis, which is one of the reasons why the PAH's presence is so useful here. But just before I say that, I'd say that the PAH are a shining light in what it means to be a social movement in the 21st century. The work they do is incredible. They show time and time again that people power works, that the people affected are the ones who must be at the centre of their own struggle. And it's very beautiful. They say the PAH is made up of ordinary people, but if Jenny and Javo are anything to go by, they're just made up of extraordinary people who work tirelessly to achieve the right to housing. And, you know, lo and behold, they're winning. Slowly, step by step, big victories, little victories, losses, but it's a long process, and they put in massive work, and they prove what they say every day. This book charts that process to a certain level. It lays out that it's a process, but, you know, beyond that, they mean what they say, they do what they say, and it does work. So anyway, that's horizontal democratic movements for you. Okay, so the Irish context is that Irish housing policy has been dominated by the same dynamics as Spanish housing policy, to a large degree. In Spain there was very little stock in social housing. In Ireland, our social housing is being just sold off at a massive rate. We've sold off 60% of our social housing over the past 20-30 years. In Spain, like in Ireland, renting is not secure. There's like the ghost of security, there's the shadow of regulation. This has meant that for most people to access housing, it means access to a mortgage. In both countries, easy access to mortgages and the flow of credit is what fueled massive growth. A housing bubble was created during which there was massive systemic pressure to buy. This is something that we have to acknowledge. There was systemic pressure to buy. It's not written into the Irish conscience or the Irish psyche or the Spanish conscience or the Spanish psyche. It is the way that a systematic pressure was put upon people. It was the only way to have security. In Ireland, like Spain, unsustainable growth in credit from banks became the economic model. The bubble burst, lo and behold, that's what happens with bubbles. And in Spain and in Ireland, and in both countries, the governments rescued the banks at the expense of the people. And this is where massive suffering begins. The Spanish housing crisis was massive. It dwarfed our own, but it was a very, very similar process. Now, for this massive housing crisis, the PAH was set up in response to it, and I mean, no movement is more fitting for a crisis. It really is an incredibly modern social movement. Now, once the banks were bailed out, differences began. In Ireland, the government immediately introduced a moratorium on evictions, which lasted for 2 years. After this, government policies favoured restructuring of mortgage debt rather than evictions. Almost all the banks in Ireland are now owned by the state, and they have been quite reluctant to evict families in mortgage arrears. Today there are 100,000 families who are in mortgage arrears. This represents in and about 15% of mortgage holders. Now, these figures are heavily massaged. The way debt restructuring with mortgages works is you get 3-month debt restructuring, 6-month debt restructuring, so you're out of mortgage arrears for a little while and then you're back in it. The debt is still there, it's not going away. Now last year the government introduced legislation to make evictions on mortgage holders easier. There will be an increase in mortgage related evictions in 2015. We've already seen what this housing bubble has done for private rented tenants, and it's going to start affecting mortgage holders too. This means evictions. This means evictions over the next couple of years. Now, the result on the private sector has been massive. You can't get mortgages. It takes you half a century to get, social housing. So you go into the rental market. The number of households in the private rented sector in Dublin alone has almost doubled in just 3 years. Rent prices in Dublin have increased 24% this year, and many people struggle to find one, even when they're looking for one. In Ireland, 90,000 families are on the government's official social housing waiting list, but the government has entirely reneged on this responsibility, and it is this section of society that is most insecure. There are exceptions such as the homeless crisis, those in direct provision, stuff like that. Now, a couple of days ago, the government announced that they are apparently building 35,000 units of social housing, which they promised 2 years ago. In conjunction with putting, what will happen, 35,000 units will be constructed, and the rest will be put off the waiting list into housing assistance payment schemes. Firstly, 2 points. Firstly, this does nothing to address homelessness in our country. Secondly, this is typical of our government's response to the crisis. They choose to recognise there is a crisis, they make what looks to be a massive concession to circumstances, but in reality this concession masks that they are reneging on the responsibility in such a way that statistics are again skewed. The Housing Assistance Payment Scheme means that thousands of people will be taken off the waiting list and put into the private rented sector, which is a very scary place to be in Ireland, especially if you have kids. It's alright if you're mobile, atomised, a big earner. Very few landlords are registered, only a tiny amount accept any kind of rent allowance, which will become housing assistance payments. Leases are short, often they're not worth the paper they're printed on. In this current bubble, landlords are upping the rent, and they're allowed to do so. They're allowed to up the rent to the market rate. The thing is, the market rate is determined by the price of rents, so it's a dangerous circle. The tools for measuring market rates are like, you're allowed to use daft.ie and things like that. Daft.ie is like a space of fantasy for landlords. It's like what they want it to be, but the fact is this fantasy becomes real because of what, the existing legislation. It's very scary when you think about it. So where does this leave us in Ireland? We have our social housing, which is, derelict, underworked. We have the right provision. Basically, where we are now in Ireland is mass immigration, the destruction of any form of community, debt, insecurity, fear. 700 children homeless. That's not okay. That's not okay by any standards. One family every day alone in Dublin are becoming homeless. That's a crisis. That's enormous. Meanwhile, there are 270,000 vacant houses. Billions are used to pay off the interest of the debt that was bought to protect, a couple of developers, a couple of hundred developers. We're just paying off the interest on that in billions. And this is where the PAH comes in. This book was written by 2 people, Ada Colau and Antia Alemani. But it's written with the struggle of the thousands affected in Spain. 2 of whom are in this room with us now. They helped write the book. They didn't put pen to paper, but it's their struggle. Their victories are charted in the lessons. It tells us what happened, what they did, and what they are doing now. It lays it out. And the most shocking thing is that step by step they are making progress on an individual basis and on a collective basis. With massive struggle, resourcefulness, inspiration, and intelligence, they've built a movement, and Housing Action now really want to share that movement with Ireland. We think it has a lot to teach us. Because housing is the foundational right on which all personal, familial, political, and communal development hinges. At the end of the day, there's 2 kinds of houses. This might be a simplification, but there are 2 kinds of houses. And the nature of one means one will destroy the other. We have to pick which house it is. The first type of house is a space, often shared, that acts as the funnel for other necessities such as warmth, shelter, electricity, security, and running water, paid through general progressive taxation. Once occupied, this house becomes a home. It becomes a social fabric, a space of community, family, and ideal humanity. It becomes a place where your memories exist, it's your security for the present, and it's the framework for your future hopes. A home is the founding block of any kind of possible family or community. It is what allows us to create a stable, meaningful existence. This is the house where you can say to yourself, that's where my daughter learned to walk. That's where the kids do their homework. That's where I cook dinner. This is my favourite place on the couch. It's an incredibly beautiful, precious thing. And it's all of our rights. The second kind of house is a commodity. It's used for gain, capital, to store wealth, to extract rent, to prop up economies, to devalue economies, to create bubbles, to spur growth. It's used as political football. It's used to financialise debt. It's used to fund banks. It's used as a speculator's good. It's used to gentrify. It's an incredibly powerful commodity. The recent recession has been based on it. All over Europe and in the USA, the house has become the most dangerous commodity. You know, behind oil, behind these things, it's just incredibly powerful. It makes and destroys political legacies. Now, the nature of the commodity and the nature of the home, they are not aligned in any sense. One will win, and the people have to choose which version of the house they want to bring into the future. Because the commodity will destroy the home, as it is doing now, as it's happening to one family every day in the city alone. I don't even know about the rest of the country, but it's just scary. What the PAH does every day is give unimaginable strength to the first type of house, the home. They do it with their actions, and they prove it every day with their fight. They show it's a process. The book, at a very affordable price, lays out this process. But it is a process we can all share. These skills are transferable. And that is why we in Housing Action now are so delighted to have these wonderful activists with us in the room now. And I'd like to hand this over to Javo now, who's going to give a presentation on what the PAH is about. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I want to thank Monday, and I want to thank all the people that have made possible for Jenny and I to be tonight here with you. We're really honored to be here, and it is our greatest pride to show you and share with you what 5 years of social fight and social struggle have been like chiseled our personalities and have changed our lives. And just like Oisin was telling you before, more or less for you to get the numbers, in Spain, every day, from Monday to Friday, 110 foreclosures are done in courthouses. So every day, 110 families lose their homes somewhere in Spain. The number is increasing by 18% every year, and your hunting season is just about to start. And I'm sorry to say this rudely, but this is what's going to happen. And Valencia, where Ginny and I live, is more or less about the size of Dublin. It's about roughly 1 million people. And out of those 110 evictions that happen every day, around 20 happen in Valencia. And Oisin was just telling that you have one family here every day, we have 20, and we are the same size of the city. And then all over Spain is 110. And of primary homes, we are not counting the evictions of holiday homes and garages and offices and shops and all that. Because if we do that, we are way over 200 every day, because real estate speculation happens with every single thing that can be a matter of commerce, of a property. So I'm going to start with, no, it's okay. I'm going to start with this presentation that I'm going to try to tell you how all this started and how the media, the government, and the Spanish society has somehow become familiar in a way with what we do. This familiarity to some people means that we are being harassed and persecuted, and for other people means that we are supported, and you will see. we start every assembly every week or every other week when we get together. The first message that we tell people is that we are all part of the same rip-off process, just like Oisin was telling before. The speculation with homes is really nasty, is obscene, because housing is a basic need. We all need a home to live in, and the home we live in is part of our personality, because it's a place where we keep all our belongings, where we shelter our families, where we build our memories, and that somehow define the way we interact with the world and with society. So when we start playing and depraving people from their homes, we're actually expelling from society families altogether, and very valuable members of society are kicked off or margined. So we're going to begin with a home and with somebody outside that is wondering what happened, and this is what happened in Spain. And maybe some of these numbers, or maybe some of these phenomena, or these things that we're going to be showing you tonight ring a bell. So if it sounds familiar, you better start doing things, because this is how the story ends. And what we would like to share with you is the way we all together can organize ourselves and stop these people from vandalizing our lives. So this is a picture of what happened in Spain since, well, first of all, let's make one picture clear. The mortgage law in Spain, the original law that was the foundation law of the actual one, is dated from late 1850s, from the reign of Elizabeth II of Spain. It was the last absolutist queen of Spain. So the spirit of that law was only to help the owners of the property to recover their capital, to recover the asset, no matter what. So it was a law that had absolutely no remorse or no consideration of the citizens themselves. It was just about letting, the señoritos, the nobles or the aristocrats to preserve their money. So then in 1947, Franco updated that law to adequate it to the 20th century banking systems, because obviously a law that was from the 1860s was completely outdated as far as accountability, or accounting, not accountability, accounting and banking system was. So what he did was he brought it to the present. And then very funny things started happening. You see that land law in 1955. What you see on those lines, you see is that the total available homes, VPO means social housing or official protection housing, and the free market housing. And you see how all those lines behaved in the second half of the 20th century. You see what happened when Spain entered the EU. The famous Boyer decree. Boyer was a minister of Felipe González, which in the late 1980s, despite he was from the Socialist Party, he was heavily influenced by all this movement of neoliberalization from the 80s. This big shadow of Margaret Thatcher was all over Europe. So he started liberalizing things, and one of the things he liberalized was the financial and the credit and the real estate sector. So all the controls and all the laws that were before that, and that prevented the excessive indebtedness of families in Spain, was all of a sudden removed. So it was a free-for-all phenomenon that it didn't pick up that fast, just for the mere fact that Spain was a poor country and people were not able to get credit. But when things started to get better, the scenario or all the conditions were given for this thing to happen. So the fact that really triggered the real estate speculation was the law of José María Aznar from 1998, which was the land law. What this law said was that it took the competence from the Ministry of Public Building, so to speak, the public infrastructure minister, who were in charge of categorizing the land, if it was urban or non-urban or natural or parks or whatever. He took that competence from the ministry, from the central government, and gave it to the municipalities. And this was the perfect scenario for all kinds of corruption to start, because it's much easier to bribe a small mayor of a small municipality than trying to bribe everybody in the Ministry of Public Infrastructure. So you see the chart there, how the social housing collapsed and the free market went sky high. And it kept that rhythm until the burst of the housing and credit bubble in 2007. So I guess that this looks familiar. I mean, that you have seen similar graphics here in Ireland as well. So we are all on the same boat. So then, as I mentioned before, after the 1998 law, the price of land went up 762% and 268% on housing. Why? Because there was unrestricted credit and the banks abused the regulation. We were telling Mick this morning how both Jenny and myself, in Spain the law forbidden that mortgages would be more than 80% of the appraisal. But in order to get more money, either the bank would make a fake or a mock appraisal to give a higher value to the property, which was Jenny's case, or my case, that they gave me 100% of the appraisal in exchange of contracting or subscribing a very expensive life insurance policy that to this present day, 7 days afterwards, it cost me 700 euros every year to maintain. And plus all my mortgage payments, of course. So, and then of course the outdated mortgage law. The mortgage law of Franco was again a law to preserve the rights and the benefits of the aristocrats. It was not about providing a basic right for citizens such as housing. Then how did the dawn of the PAH? The dawn of the PAH was over the vivienda. Vivienda means housing, and this motto was taken from V for Vendetta. Remember that movie? So Uwe de Vivienda was a funny character that Ada Colau created, like in 2005, if I managed to handle this. What you see there, sorry. That's our friend Ada, characterized as Uwe de Vivienda. She was like a superhero. And what she was heroine.
Is that Ada Colau? Ada Colau?
That's Ada, yeah, that's Ada.
She wrote this book.
In 2005. And what she was crying out loud is that every week in Barcelona, a flat would increase its price like 5,000 or 10,000 euro. And it was madness, a complete madness. Barcelona during the beginning of this century suffered a big phenomenon of gentrification that you might also be familiar with here in Dublin. And Uwe de Vivienda was a social movement that claimed that prices and speculation was getting so bad that people would never find a suitable house because it would never be, or they would never have enough money to pay for it. So sorry for this. The translation of this sticker is you're not going to have a house in your F-word life. So this sticker was all over Barcelona in 2005 and 6 because they were complaining that housing was way too expensive, regardless it was for purchase or for rental. Then what happened? Did I do this right? Yeah. Okay. Then what happened when the crisis began? When the crisis began, the initial victims, but because really the immigrant people were put through such ridiculous scams. I mean, when people from sub-Saharan Africa and from South America arrive to the assemblies and they come with the deeds that they sign, and we look at them, they are absolute madness. It's like one clause contradicts the other, and they have cross guarantee. It's like they would invite one guy from Ecuador and one guy from Colombia to the real estate agency, and they would guarantee each other, and they can know assets, and then they can execute 2 mortgages at the same time. So it's madness. It's really crazy. And then, of course, the unemployment rate in Spain, which nowadays remains above 26%, and that makes not only the housing issue, but any other issue just about as unbearable as can be. So, this is what has happened in Spain. Since the year 2007, over 500,000 foreclosures have happened, and that's what I was telling you before, about more than 120 or 110 families that are losing their homes. And Uve de Vendetta transformed into PAH because the people that were not able to get an appropriate housing in 2005 and 6, and that they got into crazy mortgages, they started getting foreclosed and evicted in 2009. So one thing turned into the other. And that's the dawn of the platform. The first platform, or the first assembly, started joining or getting together in Barcelona in 2009. Then about 6 months afterwards, the second group started getting together in Murcia, which is further south. And the third one in like April of 2011, March, April 2011, started in Valencia. So we are the third of what nowadays is a movement of over 220 assemblies around or across Spain that every week gather way over 500,000 people in all the different assemblies, in all the towns where there is one. And what is like the common of these assemblies, or how all of us, and I mean really all of us, when I first arrived into the assembly, I felt like that. I was ashamed of being in that risk of being evicted, and because the system is stigmatizing the unemployed. Of course, when I had mortgage problems, now I don't have them because I was lucky enough to find a job, and I stopped my process of foreclosure. But if I didn't find a job, I would have been foreclosed and evicted anyway. So we all arrived in the assemblies unemployed, impoverished, fearful, terribly ashamed, and feeling a tremendous abuse of power because the harassment that banks perform on people that are arreared in their mortgages should be considered by all means a crime.